Unity, gems from stories and traditions from around the world. Welcome. The following quote comes from the Holy Bible, and it expresses the importance of unity. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. That same thought is expressed by Annie Besant, the first international president of the Theosophical Society. She was a writer of theosophical books and an orator, giving talks around the world. She wrote the following theosophical poem. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. In theosophical terminology, unity is defined as the Atman. This is also called the universal spirit. To clarify a little bit more about what the Atman is, it is depicted in the following chart of the levels of consciousness within a human being. And the Atman represents the field of unity, the highest part or the aspect of our spiritual self. So you can see the Atman is on the top. It's the absolute or unity or God. And I just want to make a comment. There's no my Atman and your Atman. It is the same in each person and in everything in the world and the universe. Then we have Buddhi, which is the field of intuition. We have Manas, then the next more dense field, and the Manas is the mental body, and it includes the higher mind, which is Buddhi Manas, and Kama Manas, which is the everyday mind. Then we have Kama, the desire body, and that's the emotions. Then we have Prana, and that's the vitality within and the energy coming off the body. And in China, it's called Qi, and in Japan, Ki, and you may have heard about Reiki, the universal healing energy. Then we have the Linga Sharira, and that's the etheric double. And you can sense it. If you hold your hand off your skin, you can certainly feel the heat, but you can also sense kind of a bounciness between your hands, or you can feel it off your arm. Then the lowest level of consciousness, the most dense, is the Sthula Sharira, and that's Sanskrit for the physical body and the body-mind. So this chart shows the spiritual higher self as being the Atman, the God or the absolute, Buddhi, the intuitional body within us, and then our higher mind, which receives intuition and utilizes reasoning and wisdom. Then we have the everyday personal self that interacts in the world, and that's the everyday mind, the emotions or Kama, and the physical body and the body-mind. Now, the Atman can be thought of as the light of the sun. One ray of the sun shines on each of us as the Atman is in everyone. Just like white light can be broken down to all 7 colors of the spectrum, the Atman has all 7 levels of consciousness within it. Each ray of sunlight comes from the same sun, just as we all come from the same source, the Atman. The Atman within us is why we recognize unity when we experience it. We all have the same awareness of it. This oneness of life is also found within the human body. All the different organs and cells work together as one human being. So you can see the nervous system on the left and the digestive system on the right. And then it's all one, unity within the body. But taking this a little further, two hands may appear separate if they're considered alone. And one hand may even feel superior to the other, like if we're right-handed. The right hand can say, I'm all the body needs, but both are important. They can seem unconnected unless you look at them from the wider standpoint and see they're connected to the body, and where the two hands can work up together as a united force to pick up water, scoop it in our hands. Another example of unity is with the fingers on your hand. Each finger can feel separate, and the thumb may feel superior because it's the strongest. Or the pointer finger may feel it's most important because it can write and point things out. Again, from a wider stance, each finger is needed for the hand to work well. As in the little baby's hands, fingers holding the parent's hand, and then the whole hand grasping the apple from the tree. Other examples of unity include the little ducks swimming with their mother, and then the baby duck on the mother's back. They're one. Monkeys grooming each other. And then it looks like a new baby and the mother and a grandmother. And then these pictures of children helping each other. Little sister maybe helping the brother, and then the older cowboy helping the younger one. And this picture of grandparents, and you have to give the little boy credit for his perseverance there in pushing his grandma. And then letting someone merge in traffic is another example of unity, and the traffic keeps flowing. So I'd like to share a story that was reported in the newspaper, the Seattle Times, several years ago. And it's about the Special Olympics, which is an athletic competition for children and adults with intellectual or physical disabilities. And so you can see the picture with the women in the race with the wheelchairs, and then there's some helpers helping the children in the wheelchairs. And then sometimes helpers help the person walk in the Special Olympics. In the story in the newspaper, 9 children were ready to run a foot race. The starting gun was fired and the children began to sprint. Right away, one child stumbled and fell and started crying. The other 8 children running forward heard the cries and all stopped. Everyone came back to help. One child bent down and kissed the injured child. 2 other children helped him stand up. Then all 9 linked their arms together and crossed the finish line as a group. And the crowd, in admiration for the compassion shown by the contestants, stood up and applauded. And the children jumped for joy in response and hugged one another. And the crowd's cheering lasted for 10 minutes. This unity is also shown in friendship. Mencius, the Chinese philosopher who lived from 380 to 289 before current era, spoke of unity and friendship in this way. Friendship is one mind in 2 bodies. You can feel so close to your friend and so understood that you feel like you're one person. Zeno, the Greek philosopher who lived about the same time, said, "What is a friend? Another I." Again, the oneness of friendship is truly felt. We feel completely at ease and accepted by a friend. These pictures show the unity in friendship, which is not easy to put into words. On the surface, it looks as if there's just two people interacting, nothing more. But when we experience the oneness of our friendship ourselves, as Zeno and Mencius described, we know what it's like to feel one with one another. It is a mystery that can't be defined. You feel like you're not two people. You feel so close, as if you're one. The mystery is reflected in the following American haiku, which is a Japanese 17-syllable poem. Carrots and peas in a pot on the stove. We eat them and they are part of us. Weren't we all along? Again, we have the mystery. We are one with the carrots and peas when we're buying them at the store. Then when we cook them, we're one with them in our minds as we prepare dinner. Lastly, we are one physically with the vegetables, and when we eat them, we are one. But most importantly, we are one at the level of the Atman all along. This is true spirituality. It is reflected in the meaning of the word spirituality, which comes from the Latin root spiro, meaning breath. It refers to the one breath of which we all are a part. We each have the same breath of God, or the Atman within us. Einstein, the physicist and mathematician who gave us E equals mc squared, understood the unity underlying everything in the world and described how easy it is to forget about it. He said, "A human being is a part of the whole called by us the universe, a part limited in space and time. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and his feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for him, restricting him to his personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to him. His task must be to free himself from this prison by widening his circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." Einstein said we have an optical delusion that we're separate from others, and that if we widen our sense of compassion to all living creatures, we can feel this oneness, something good to practice. Realizing the oneness of life is also described by Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. And this gospel is part of the Gnostic gospels that were found in 1945 in Egypt at Nag Hammadi. And they aren't included in the Bible because they were discovered so much later. It says, "When you make the two one, and when you make the inner as the outer, and the outer as the inner, and the above as the below, and when you make the male and the female one and the same, then you shall enter the kingdom." We can enter the kingdom of God, so to speak, when we realize the oneness with everything in the world. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, one of the founders of the Theosophical Society and author of The Secret Doctrine, phrased it this way: "Very few are the strong swimmers who reach the light. He who gets there must have ceased to be a number and have become all numbers. He must have forgotten the illusion of separation and accepted only the truth of collective individuality. Again, to reach the light of the divine, we must see the oneness of all humanity." Moving to Australia, the Indigenous culture there recognizes the unity of all. all people believe that nothing is separate from anything else, especially nature and the environment. So you can see the picture of Uluru on the top right, this gigantic boulder, huge, that comes out of the ground. About 20 years ago, I visited Australia and spoke to the Indigenous people there and learned about their culture. At the time, they referred to themselves as Aborigines, and the saying was widespread. Happy to be an Aborigine, Aborigine. Now they may refer to themselves as Indigenous. What they felt was an affinity with nature, and this next quote refers to the tribesman who felt literally he was part of the land. He said, "I am the land. It is my backbone. I stand straight, happy, and proud because of the land. I can paint, dance, create, and sing as my ancestors did before me." This unity with the land and the environment is also demonstrated in the book, The Aboriginal Gift by Eugene Stockton. In it, an Aboriginal schoolgirl was asked to draw a picture of herself. When she was done, she had painted a picture of a beautiful landscape. And her picture depicted the part of the country that she came from, but she did not draw herself in the picture. And this reflects the Aboriginal viewpoint that nature and the human being are one. So the little girl didn't paint these pictures, but it shows the unity, and this is Uluru. So you can see Uluru again, this gigantic, massive rock. And then the Indigenous culture's way of having their art on this boomerang that I got there, and the other picture. And then another wonderful picture of the boomerang that I received, and it's, I think, called monkey wood. The unity that is felt in the Indigenous culture is reflected in the attitude that says there are no barriers or separation between one person and everyone else. There is just an awareness of an all-encompassing us. There's no in or out group, or we or they, just an all-embracing us. Again, a quote from the Indigenous Australian wisdom, "I am a part of every other, and every other is a part of me." You can see the picture of the tribesman on the left, which is an older picture. And then the picture of the men with the didgeridoo, which is a wonderful instrument, low pitched with a resonating sound. It's just wonderful to hear. It's made from a hollowed out tree trunk, and the men vibrate their lips as they blow into it. And they can make a continuous sound because of the special way they take the air into their cheeks and store it there as they blow out the air slowly to sustain the tone. It's really something to watch and to hear. Oops. Each person is treated equally with respect. Everyone is equal around the fire. So there's no fire in this picture, but the sense of belonging can be seen. And there's a strong sense of this inclusivity. One belongs by merely existing. The people have an interdependence on each other, which makes strength in the group. And this is reflected in the following quote. "If you stay closely united, you will stay strong as the tree in the middle of a bushfire. The leaves may be scorched, but the tough bark is only scarred. Inside the tree, the sap is still flowing and the roots are still strong. If you are united like the tree that will endure the flames, you will always have the power to be reborn. So shifting to the continent of Africa, there's a word that expresses this unity. It's Ubuntu, and it means humanity. And it refers to the principle of brotherhood and sisterhood, where people feel a kinship and with others and live together cooperatively. The proverb, "I am because we are," perfectly describes Ubuntu. It is the principle that individuals exist because of the universal bond of sharing and sense of community. And this comes from the Zulu and Xhosa cultures. So you heard me pronounce Xhosa with a click as I said the word. So the X is said using the K sound along with a click on the side of your cheek. And I learned this when I attended the Parliament of the World's Religions in South Africa in 1999. And at one of the breaks, where several of us were sitting in a grassy amphitheater, I heard a young man using the African language that included the clicks. And I started chatting with him and learned he knew 7 languages. And he taught me how to say the click. And it's also said at the same time you say the K. So, Xhosa. I can't do it anymore, but the whole experience was very interesting and unifying. It was really cool. So Ubuntu is the view of life that says we exist only by the help of others. We are alive because we are born from our mothers. We survive through the help of our families and communities. Our communities exist from the work of those who came before us, our ancestors. Ubuntu refers to the support and caring that people give to one another. With Ubuntu, everyone is in. There is no one that isn't accepted in the group. And I just love this picture of the flower with the older people and younger kids. And just like in Australia, everyone is equal around the fire. Ubuntu is the concept of giving to others what we would want in return, and it incorporates the golden rule, where everyone is deserving of love and acceptance. Ubuntu values people for being just as they are. We are all part of the one human family. This is depicted in the African adage that says, the blood in all of us is the same. So the picture on the right shows the red blood corpuscles that are in the blood. And then the meaning of the proverb is illustrated in the continent of Africa, filled with red blood cells on it. Ubuntu stands for solidarity, where people work collectively for the common good. And this is expressed in the African term collective fingers, which means each person works with everyone to make a contribution to the whole. Some may make more of a contribution, but it is the whole that matters. Ubuntu in action means shared work, justice, and equality with respect for others. And a council of elders oversees the management of the tribe, and people cooperate from a sense of collective trust, and no one overpowers another. Disputes are resolved so both sides can feel a winner. And this shows another group of people from Papua New Guinea. So I'd like to share a story from Sudan the sheikh and his 10 sons. Once upon a time, there was a sheikh who ruled over a prosperous country. He was very old and about to die. Over the course of his life, he had raised 10 sons, and he wanted to teach them a lesson about cooperation. And he asked his sons to come and meet with him. And each son was to bring 2 camel driving sticks. As they stood before their dying father, he asked each son to break one of their sticks. They complied, and each broke a stick. Then the sheikh asked his youngest son to collect the unbroken sticks and tie them in a bundle. Then he asked each of his sons to try and break the tied bundle of sticks, and no one was able to do it. Even the strongest son could not break it. So he said, "My sons, I am dying. Your oldest brother will now carry on my duties. Serve him and help him serve our people. You must all work together to accomplish this. My sons, you are like these sticks. If each of you stands alone and doesn't pay attention to the others, you will be easy for an enemy to break as a single stick. But if you band together and be as the fingers of one hand, you will be unbreakable, just like these bundles of sticks." Living and working together as the sheikh's sons did is an expression of unity. From Persia, we have another poetic expression that exemplifies this from the poetry of Jalalludin Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet and Sufi master. And the Sufis are the mystics of the Islam religion. He said, "I, you, he, she, we. In the garden of mystic lovers, these are not true distinctions." There's no separation between people. We are one. So moving to North America, the Native Americans feel the same unity with the natural world as do the Indigenous Australians and Africans. Chief South of the Suquamish Native American tribe, where Seattle got its name, South, referred to the unity of all that lives as the web of life. In 1854, he gave this response to the President of the United States inquiry about purchasing land from the Native Americans. His response was written down by Ted Perry, a journalist. "The great chief in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land. How can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land, the swiftness of the antelope? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them from us? If we sell our land, you must remember and teach your children that the rivers are our brothers and yours, and you must henceforth give the rivers the kindness you would give any brother. The air is precious to the red man, for all things share the same breath. The beasts, the trees, and man, we are all of the same breath." This reminds me of the one breath from which the term spirituality comes from. And Chief South concludes, "All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself." So very inspired, his view of the web of life, and very poetic. And this is also depicted in the following Native American prayer to Grandmother Earth. The two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the winged, and all that move on you are your children. With all beings and all things, we shall be as relatives, just as we are related to you, O Mother. This perfectly describes the Atman. All creatures of the earth are children of Mother Earth and are relatives to all humanity. So moving to Hawaii, there is a rich culture of living with nature, with harmony with all living things. An example of this is the practice Ho'oponopono, the ritual of reconciliation and forgiveness. Ho'oponopono comes from the root ho, which means to bring about, and pono, which means to correct or make proper. And this is to bring about a perfect order or a sense of well-being. Traditionally, Ho'oponopono was led by healing priests or kahuna among family members of a person who was physically ill. They would come together and perform a ritual that cleansed the person so he could be healed. And the process may take several days. So you can see the slide with Morna Nalamaku Simeona, and then the place on the beach where the ceremony and ritual took place. Now, the Hawaiian culture knows of the power of one's thoughts, and it's believed that wrongdoing and anger cause illness. Part of Ho'oponopono involves confession and repentance from the person who is ill. Those he has wronged and their families are also part of the healing, so direct apologies can be made to them, as well as restitution if needed, and it's quite involved. Through prayer and meditation, Ho'oponopono appeals to the divine creator to bring about a change in the person's health to one that is filled with love, gratitude, and forgiveness. It's a cleansing process that reduces stress and aids healing so one can return to a perfect state. And the liturgy goes, Divine Creator, Father, Mother, Son as one. If I, my family, relatives, or ancestors have offended you in thought, words, or deeds from the beginning of our creation to the present, we ask your forgiveness. Let this cleanse, purify, and release all the negative memories, blocks, and vibrations to transmute these unwanted energies to pure light. And it is done. Basically, it is saying to the divine creator and to the people involved, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And the response is, thank you. I love you. I forgive you. So I'd like to share a story about Ho'oponopono from Joe Vitale and his book, Zero Limits. He writes about a doctor, Dr. Len, who cured a complete ward of criminally insane patients at Hawaii State Hospital through the use of Ho'oponopono. The hospital was so bad, it had a reputation for staff quitting soon after they were hired. So when Dr. Hugh Len started working there, he didn't see individual patients. He just came in cheerfully every day, smiled at people as he passed by, and reviewed their charts. As Dr. Len read about a patient, he would feel something in his body, an empathetic pain or discomfort, And that's when he started Ho'oponopono and kept saying, I am sorry, I love you. He worked on asking forgiveness from the divine and sending love to the part of himself that felt the patient's distress. And then that would be sent out to the patients. Pretty soon, a miraculous thing started to happen. The people began acting better, and those on the ward didn't need to be shackled. And their medications started to be reduced, and the staff started enjoying coming to work. And eventually, the ward closed. Another example from Joe Vitale demonstrates this process. So you can see that's Ho'oponopono. And so one day, Joe Vitale received an email from someone, and he used the process saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. He described that he was evoking the spirit of love to heal within himself what was going on in the outer circumstances. And in an hour, he received an apology from the person. So how does this work? It's based on the principle that we create our experience of the world in our minds. Take the example of going to a party. Each person's reactions will be different there. Some may enjoy themselves, others might feel bored, someone might feel pain if an ex-partner is there. The surroundings are the same, but each person's experience is unique. This shows how we create our world. How we feel is our choice and responsibility. So when something in our lives becomes a problem, such as a crabby boss, a relative we can't get along with, or a child who is failing in school, how or why this is happening is our responsibility too. It may have originated in past lives or from our own current choices. But Ho'oponopono says that if there's a problem, because we are there with it, it is our creation and our responsibility to heal. And as we work to heal ourselves, we impact and heal others too. So you think of the situation you're troubled by, and you picture the person or people involved, and you're open to whatever comes, whatever you did that contributed to the problem. Then you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. This is acknowledging what was done by apologizing and asking for forgiveness from the divine. Then saying, thank you, I love you. From India, there's a wonderful technique that's very similar to Ho'oponopono. It's from Paramahansa Yogananda, the Indian monk and guru who wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, and he founded the Self-Realization Fellowship, and his emphasis was on meditation. He taught an amazing healing technique that's very similar to Ho'oponopono, and it goes like this. For 45 seconds, it's just very brief, and he emphasized that. You think of someone you have difficulties with, and you hold the person or situation in your mind, and you flood them with light, saying to yourself, may he be filled with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Then the second part goes, which is just the short 15 seconds. You envision yourself in your mind. You fill yourself with light and say to yourself, may I be filled with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. This takes exactly 1 minute. And Yogananda says that if we do this 5 times a day, the situation will transform for the better and in ways we cannot now imagine. He says that it sometimes works quickly or sometimes it takes a bit of time. Nevertheless, it works. He said doing it 3 or 4 times, it might work, but 5 times practically never fails. The following story is about a man who learned a lesson about letting go of judgment and having tolerance for others, and it's called Shoes in Church. I showered and shaved. I adjusted my tie. I got there and sat in a pew just in time. Bowing my head in prayer, as I closed my eyes, I saw the shoe of the man next to me touching mine. With plenty of room on either side, I thought, why must our shoes touch? It bothered me, his shoe touching mine, but it didn't bother him much. A prayer began, Our Father. I thought, this man with the shoes has no pride. They're dusty, worn, even worse, there's holes on the side. Thank you for the blessings, the prayer went on. The shoe man said a quiet amen. I tried to focus on the prayer, but my thoughts were on his shoes again. Aren't we supposed to look our best when walking through that door? Well, this certainly isn't it, I thought, glancing toward the floor. Then the prayer ended and the songs of praise began. The shoe man was certainly loud, sounding proud as he sang. His voice lifted the rafters. His hands were held high. The Lord could surely hear the shoe man's voice from the sky. It was time for the offering, and what I threw in was steep. I watched as the shoe man reached into his pockets deep. I saw what was pulled out, what the shoe man put in. Then I heard a soft clink as silver hits tin. The sermon really bored me to tears, that's no lie. It was same for the shoe man, for tears fell from his eyes. At the end of the service, as is the custom here, we must greet new visitors and show them good cheer. I felt moved somehow and wanted to greet the shoe man. So after the closing prayer, I reached over and shook his hand. He was old and his hair was truly a mess, but I thanked him for coming, for being our guest. He said, my name's Charlie. I'm glad to meet you, my friend. There were tears in his eyes, but he had a large, wide grin. Let me explain, he said, wiping his tears. I've been coming here for months, and you're the first to say hi. I know that my appearance is not like the rest, but I really do try to always look my best. I always clean and polish my shoes before my very long walk, but by the time I get here, they're dirty and dusty like chalk. My heart filled with pain, and I swallowed to hide my tears as he continued to apologize for daring to sit so near. He said, when I get here, I know I must look a sight, but I thought if I could touch you, then maybe our souls might unite. I was silent for a moment, knowing whatever I said would pale in comparison. I spoke from my heart, not my head. Oh, you've touched me, I said, and taught me in part that the best of any man is found in his heart. The rest, I thought, this shoe man will never know, just like how just how thankful I really am that his dirty old shoe touched my soul. So you can see from that story how easy it is to be judgmental of others and how easy it is to be wrong. And then from India, Mother Teresa. She was a dedicated Albanian Indian Catholic nun who worked in the poorest neighborhoods of Calcutta. She set up housing for the sick and dying. And she said, when asked how we can increase unity and peace in the world, she says it starts in the home. So in her famous saying, you ask what you can do to promote world peace, go home and love your family. So living as an expression of unity starts wherever we live. This next story is a beautiful example of unity as shown by a brother's love for his sister. And it comes from Dan Millman, author of The Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior. And it's the story of Liza. Liza was a little girl who suffered from a rare and serious disease. Her only chance of recovery was a blood transfusion from her 5-year-old brother, who had miraculously survived the same disease and had developed antibodies to combat the illness. The doctor explained the situation to her little brother and asked the boy if he would be willing to give his blood to his sister. He hesitated for a moment before taking a deep breath and said, "Yes, I'll do it if it'll save Liza." As this transfusion progressed, and with his family all around, the little boy laid in a bed next to his sister and smiled, seeing the color return to her cheeks. Then his face grew pale as he asked the doctor in a trembling voice, "Will I start to die right away?" This touches me. Being young, the boy had misunderstood the doctor. He thought he was going to have to give all of his blood to his sister. So this is an amazing story of love and unity from Liza's brother. We can all use it as an inspiration for us to do the same for our families and for all. Lastly, the Yoruba religion in Africa, in Nigeria, has a wonderful proverb that sums up how we should treat one another. So you can see the tribesmen in their garb and then their deity, Olodumare. And the proverb says, "Gentle character is that which enables the rope of life to stay unbroken in one's hand." So if we work to carry the rope of life and not break it with our hands, we can keep the principle of unity alive in our hearts. Hopefully, these stories and quotes of unity have inspired you to live more fully with the awareness that we are all one. Thank you.